I'm probably stating the obvious here, but I have a pretty distinct speaking voice. I sort of talk like an amateur newscaster, and this is my real voice. This is actually how I talk all the time. I can do a newscaster voice if I want to, but that's not my real voice. This is my real voice. I am speaking in a bit more of an energized fashion right now. There's a bit more melody to my speech, but this is still my basic speaking voice. And I've noticed recently, as I've been doing more podcast interviews, that I actually have some vocal issues, some weird vocal tics that I would like to improve. And so that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to talk about the problems I'm facing and how I intend to address them. And I understand this may seem like a weird topic for a bodybuilding channel, but I don't think it is, because a lot of people come to me and they're seeking to improve not just their physical health, but their cognitive health as well. And speaking and communication is directly tied to cognition, and I think is firmly within my wheelhouse. So I'm hopeful that this video will still be useful to you. So let's dive in. The biggest issue I've noticed with my speaking when I do podcasts is that I actually have kind of a stutter. It's not a stutter on consonants. It's not an inability to pronounce a word like a p-p-p. It's not that. What I actually do is I repeat words at the beginning of a phrase, and I do it most typically after I've been silent. So after someone has been speaking for a while and I'm about to interject to either ask a question or raise a point, I will occasionally stutter, and it'll sound like this. So maybe the question I'm thinking in my mind is, how did you do that? What I will say instead is, how did you do that? As you listen and watch me do this, you can see I'm sort of reformulating the question as I speak. I'm just vomiting out words, and I'm trying to correct myself after the fact. And I don't particularly like it personally, and I think it can be kind of hard for the listener to follow too. So I'd like to address this. And I think there's two primary underlying causes. One is physical, and the other is more mental. So on the physical side, I think I'm just being a little too tense. When I do these podcast interviews, I'm pretty revved up, I'm pretty excited, and I'm sitting alone in my room, and it's a weird setting to feel so energized. And as a result, I think I'm carrying too much tension in my jaw, in my face, in my body, and that just makes it harder for me to communicate fluently and easily. And so first and foremost, to address this, I think I need to focus on breathing. I actually am a singer. I grew up as a singer. I've done yoga and meditation over the years. So I'm a person who has given a lot of conscious thought to breath work. And so I understand the basic mechanics of it. I also know that for me personally, I have some issues with my breathing. I will sometimes take too big of a breath, and that will cause tension over time because I'm essentially holding in too much energy, and that's fatiguing. And so one of the issues I think I'm having here when I'm speaking in this podcast setting is I'm just taking too deep and too quick of a breath, and I'm too energized before I speak. And so what I really need to do is take a smaller, lower, calmer breath before I speak anew, because that will really help to set the tone for my body and give me a smooth vocal onset and make me feel less stuck. I'm also going to start to do some vocal warm-ups before I do these podcast interviews. Nothing complicated, just some lip trills, some humming, maybe some things like that. Things to just really feel more relaxed and loose, so that when I begin speaking in this energized fashion, it doesn't feel foreign and tiring. Lastly, another thing I want to play with is my volume. I'm having conversations with people, I'm trying to get points across, and volume can be a very effective tool because it can help emphasize a point. But there's lots of other ways to emphasize points other than volume. You can slow down your speech. You can actually get quieter. You can interject pauses in between the words, kind of what I'm trying to do now as I'm speaking to you here. And my point is that I just need to be more creative, because I think an over-reliance on volume is just going to be vocally and mentally fatiguing. It's also less interesting for the listener to hear, and probably less interesting for my conversational partner too. And so I think if I can vary up my vocal inflection more and not just be overly reliant on volume, that will also help me to feel more relaxed and centered, less fatigued, and less likely to get stuck and do this kind of stutter thing. One additional thought I'm playing with is seeking ways to better integrate my body into my speech. You can see as you're watching me now, I tend to gesture and gesticulate with my hands. This is how I talk. But again, in this office setting, right, I'm sitting in my office at home, it feels weird to use my body. It feels like I should be more still and rigid. And I think that rigidity over time is creating tension in my speech. And so I think if I can better connect with my body, really feel what I'm feeling in that moment and express that, that will make my speech more expressive and less fatiguing and less tiring, because it will give me a better outlet for my energy, for my excitement. Because again, a lot of what I'm dealing with here is sort of pent up excitement and stress, and I need to find a better outlet for it than just my voice. Now, all of the strategies I just detailed were physical, but there's also a clear mental component to what's going on here too. I think the most important thing I can do, particularly when interjecting or asking a question, is just to pause more, just to give myself a little more time, a nanosecond more, so that I can process all the information I've heard without throwing something back out. I think giving myself more time to properly articulate questions will just make things easier. It's as simple as that. I also tend to speak very rapidly. You can tell in this video, my speaking cadence is quite fast. And I think that if I can just slow down a little bit, particularly when I'm about to ask a question, that will give me more time both to relax physically and to properly articulate my thoughts. Secondly, I think I just need to commit more to my sentences. A lot of what I'm trying to do is essentially edit my sentences in real time, as if I'm typing on a computer and then going back and deleting something. And that's weird. That's not how people speak. That's not how I speak. That's not possible. And so what I really need to do is, if I start a sentence in a way that I don't like, I just need to finish it and then go back and say, or to put it another way, right? Like I don't have to correct my speech in real time. I don't need to speak in perfect prose and poetry. Instead, I can just say a sentence and then say another sentence, in much the same way that I'm doing in this recording. And so part of that is a confidence thing, right? Like I want to sound smart. I want to sound like I'm saying the right things. And I think I just need to have the confidence in myself to speak and allow myself to finish the sentences I've started and then correct after the fact or rephrase after the fact if I need to do that. And lastly, on a similar note, I think I just need to practice doing this more. I need to practice speaking in this energized fashion just a little bit more. In fact, that's kind of what I'm doing right now with recording this video. I don't have a script here. I have a couple of points I knew that I wanted to hit, but mainly I'm just sitting here and talking. I view this as practice. Hopefully it's beneficial to you as well. But I think doing things like this will just enable me to perform better when I'm podcasting. Again, I mentioned I'm a musician. I'm thinking of the podcast as my performance and these settings here as practice. So in summation, to tackle my vocal problems, I'm going to take two different approaches. I'm going to focus on my body, try to be more relaxed, be more mindful of my breathing, be more mindful of my mouth and my lips and my tongue, and really not let tension build. And be mindful of my volume and try to find different ways to get my point across that aren't just vocally or physically fatiguing. And then on the mental side, I'm just going to try to give the conversation a bit more space, trust that what I say makes sense, commit to the sentence, and give myself more opportunities to practice. I understand I've been talking about myself exclusively in this video, so how can we make this useful to you? Well, if you're trying to improve your speaking, I would encourage you to go through a similar exercise as to what I've just done. Try to honestly and accurately diagnose the problem you're having, try to then assess what those underlying causes are, and then think of ways to solve them. I don't think anything I've articulated here is groundbreaking. These ideas aren't particularly hard to figure out. I think my approach here is relatively intuitive and common sense based, and I think almost anyone could have come up with the same solutions. And I think you can do the same. If you've got a problem or just something you want to improve upon, that's the process. Diagnose, evaluate, execute. You can do that with speech just as you can do that with anything. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video useful, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And more specifically, if you like this topic, let me know because I'm happy to do more content in this area. Appreciate you.